Coming up on Jerusalem Dateline, from the battleground in Gaza to legal battles at The Hague, Israel fights on multiple fronts. As fighting intensifies between Israel and Hezbollah, some fear it could spread beyond Israel's northern border, and collecting testimonies of former hostages for generations to come. Plus, the Jerusalem Prayer Breakfast, praying for the peace of Jerusalem and Israel, more crucial now than ever. All this and more coming up on this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. Hello and welcome to this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. I'm Chris Mitchell. From the battleground in Gaza to legal battles at The Hague, Israel is fighting on multiple fronts. But Israel is finding allies on Capitol Hill and among Christian leaders. Despite international condemnation, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu told soldiers that Israel's operation into Rafah, the last major stronghold of Hamas with 4 battalions, will go on and is crucial.
The battle in Rafah is critical. It's not just the rest of their battalions, it's also their oxygen pipes for escape and resupply. This battle, of which you are an integral part, is a battle that decides many things in this campaign.
Israel's defense minister Yoav Gallant says more IDF troops will soon join the fighting in Rafah. He says the military action is working, that the IDF is cutting off Hamas's ability to rearm and resupply.
The meaning is we are turning off the tap on Hamas. We are wearing Hamas down.
And Israel today beginning its response to an international legal challenge to its action in Rafah by South Africa. It's asking the International Court of Justice to order Israel to stop its attack on Rafah and indeed get out of the Gaza Strip altogether.
Immediately, totally and unconditionally withdraw Israeli army from the entirety of the Gaza Strip.
But Israel's representative in The Hague emphasized the importance of the Rafah operation. There are dozens of tunnels in Rafah, including those that cross into Egypt. Abductees are held in these tunnels. And in New York, the UN Security Council held its first meeting focused on the hostages held by Hamas, with the U.S. and other countries demanding they be released. Back in the Middle East, the U.S. says the first trucks carrying aid for Gaza have rolled across a newly built U.S. floating pier. A State Department spokesman said the aid from offshore is crucial as deliveries by land continue to be disrupted by the war, terrorism, or hijackings. The pier was attacked by terrorists in late April. Hamas promises to attack any foreign troops seen helping to bring in aid via that new pier. And in Washington, congressional Republicans, joined by 16 Democrats, have passed a bill to force President Biden to send weapons to Israel. Biden already stopped one shipment of bombs and threatens to halt more deliveries if Israel launches a full-scale invasion of Rafah.
This is a catastrophic decision with global implications. It is obviously being done as a political calculation, and we cannot let this stand.
And if you're not supporting Israel, you're supporting Hamas, a terrorist organization. And so when President Biden said he wants to hold back on those arms sales, he is holding back on Israel's ability to go and fight a war against Hamas.
But the bill is expected to go no further, since Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer won't bring it up for a vote. And on Thursday, the National Religious Broadcasters reissued a letter sent by more than 150 Christian leaders to President Biden. The letter expressed concern for the White House's unprecedented interference in the affairs of a close ally and called for a course correction. With the Israel-Hamas war well into its 7th month, more than 1 million Palestinians have been displaced from their homes. In response, the Biden administration is considering a plan to bring certain Palestinians to the U.S. But as Caitlin Burke reports, many concern the move would pose a grave threat to U.S. national security.
According to the White House, discussions are underway, but no decisions have been made. One potential roadblock being the practicality of bringing Palestinian refugees to the U.S.
We are constantly evaluating policy proposals to further support Palestinians who are family members of American citizens and may want to come to the United States. So we're evaluating it.
The possibility led to quick rejection from more than 24 Republican senators, calling the plan a national security risk. In a letter to President Biden, they questioned how the administration would properly vet any refugees for terrorist ties or sympathies.
Palestinians are taught from a very early age to not only hate Jews, but hate all infidels. There's a reason that the Arab countries around Israel do not accept Palestinian refugees on a permanent basis. It's a risky proposition. So why add that risk to the enormous risk, the clear and present danger that this administration is already subjecting America to with their open border on our southwest border?
Former State Department advisor Gabriel Nerona, now executive director of Polaris National Security, points out that according to international asylum law, the U.S. should not be on the hook for taking in Palestinian refugees.
The United States is not the first country in the region that people can get to. It's pretty much the last country that people can get to. And so they should be looking to go other places. And the Biden administration, frankly, should be showing a leadership role here, pressing states in the region to take in refugees from Gaza who are actually trying to find a safe place to live right now.
Since the U.S. refugee program began more than 40 years ago, it has not resettled Palestinians in large numbers. Nerona tells CBN News, however, he believes neither past policy nor Republican pushback will prevent the administration from moving forward.
Frankly, they've had an immigration policy from day one that is all about doing what they believe is the humanitarian thing and ignoring national security concerns.
According to recent polls, 34% of Palestinians in Gaza support Hamas, and the Biden administration acknowledges the terror group has disguised its militants during prior civilian evacuations. Caitlin Burke, CBN News, Washington.
Coming up, some fear the fight between Israel and Hezbollah could spread beyond Israel's northern border. For more than 7 months, fighting between Israel and Hezbollah has led to concerns that it could explode into a full-blown war. Many Israelis fear the threat extends far beyond the country's northern border. Take a look. Reserve Lieutenant Colonel Eyal Dror is one of the nearly 100,000 Israelis who have fled their homes in the north.
We are living 7 months out of our home because of this war. We are trying to go back home, but I think that the most important message is that we deserve to live. I'm living in the northern part of Israel, a mile from the Israeli-Lebanese border, and I think that I have all the right to live peacefully without thinking whether Hezbollah will slaughter my family.
For years, those in the region have lived under the shadow of the terror group.
I came here a few days ago, and I love the North. I walked paths and trails, and I was angry that I couldn't walk and drive where I wanted to go. I can only imagine what it's like for the Israeli people that live here.
American author Clifford Sobin wrote, Israel's struggle with Hezbollah, a war without end. He's in Israel to talk about the connection between Hezbollah and Iran.
My message today is that there are two things that need to happen. One, it's important to explain the central narrative that people here have a right to exist in safety and freedom. And secondly, to show how Hezbollah is impacting that and show it through their own videos.
Those videos prove the danger of Hezbollah.
I showed a video of Hezbollah destroying a home through the sights of an anti-tank missile, and I showed a video of Hezbollah's statement saying they want to destroy Israel. These are the things that I think have to be expressed to the American public. It's part of a conversation. It's not the end, but it's the start of a conversation.
Sobin says Americans need to know why it's important to understand the extent of the terrorist support and reach.
It's because it's one of Iran's proxies, and it's part of the whole all the Iranian tentacles. On top of that, Hezbollah operates criminal operations in the United States. So it's a threat to the United States, it's a threat to Europe, it's certainly a threat to Israel, and it's part of Iran's strength. Israel's the canary in the coal mine. What starts here comes to the United States. There's no doubt about it. The United States is facing that battle, and so is Western Europe. But not everybody wants to understand that that battle is coming.
For Israel, the battle is already here.
It's a war of attrition. Every day, there are attacks coming from Lebanon against the IDF, and the IDF response or trying to prevent these attacks.
Zarit Zahavi of the Alma Education and Research Center studies the security challenges along Israel's northern borders. Since October 7th, Hezbollah has fired almost 1,700 rockets, missiles, and anti-tank weapons against Israel.
Like if I'm trying to describe the relationship between Iran and Hezbollah, Iran is the international company, huge company, and Hezbollah is one of the senior CEOs of this company. So Iran listens to its most senior CEO, to its needs, to its recommendations, but eventually Iran is the boss. Iran is providing Hezbollah with the munition, the ideology, and the money, and eventually once Iran gives the order, Hezbollah will be there.
Zahavi points out why Hezbollah is a much more formidable enemy than Hamas.
The fire, meaning rockets and drones and missiles, is 10 times more than Hamas. More than 200,000 different types of artilleries like that. With Radwan brigades, this is the commando units of Hezbollah. They are not only trained for an invasion and occupying communities, they had done so in Syria. They are experienced in that. And the tunnels that you've seen in Gaza exist the same way in Lebanon.
We asked her about the likelihood of all-out war.
To tell you the truth, every morning when I wake up, I ask the same question, where this is going, because we want to see the people coming back to their homes, and we don't know how. It is clear to us that the capabilities of Hezbollah cannot remain the same. Something needs to be done. IDF will have to take care of that. I'm not sure that it would be an all-out war, but it should be more than what is happening now.
Given her close proximity to those terrorist commandos, we also asked her about Hezbollah flags on U.S. college campuses and why Americans need to pay attention.
Because you're next. In one sentence. That's it. You see this in the universities. There were already Hezbollah flags in the universities. There were already chants, death to America, in America. This is not a coincidence. It's part of a campaign that Iran is having, which has bombs and has soft power, using cyber, using social media to incite the young people of United States against America itself. Now, you may say it's a minority. I agree. But if you will not deal with that, it will not stay like that. You have to deal with it now in your country before it will become something much greater.
Up next, Israel collects stories of former hostages for future generations. Israel has launched an ambitious project to collect testimonies of all those kidnapped on October 7th to have an historical record for future generations. CBN Middle East correspondent Julie Stahl brings us that story.
Hamas kidnapped Merav Tal and also took the body of her long-term partner Yaakov Tal on October 7th.
I saw Yahya outside the house, sitting on his knees, and two terrorists were holding him by his sides. He was with his back to me. They were holding weapons, and he yelled at me, "I'm going to die." And I'm on a Vespa, and I told him, "Don't resist." One who was sitting was holding a knife to my neck. They brought me down from the Vespa. Someone hits me on the head. I almost lost consciousness. I was getting ready to take a shower. Then he told me, "You take a shower. When you finish, you don't wear your clothes. I'm coming to check you out if you have a chip in your body."
That's just one of dozens of testimonies that's part of the government press office project.
The GPO took footage and testimonies from all the hostages that arrived in the first period a few months ago to make sure that, first of all, the foreign media will exactly know what is going on in Hamas horrible activities that they do in the jails, but also for the next generation, that people are ignoring, people forgotten.
GPO Director Nitzan Chen stresses the importance of recording the personal first-hand stories for documentation and authenticity.
So just imagine if even today, 6 months after the massacre, some people, even the Secretary of the UN deny that there was abuse against women at the jail. Just imagine what will happen 10 years from now. People will ignore, deny that there was some rape in October 7th, there was murder in October 7th. Therefore, the testimonies are very, very important for those days and next generation as well.
Journalists met some participants during a preview of the film, which will eventually be stored in the National Archives.
There were shouts of Jew in Arabic. They broke in screaming and shooting, bullet marks on the door. We understood my husband was shot. He was lying on the floor with his hands up. This was all in front of our eyes.
At Kfar Aza, terrorists abducted Chen Goldstein Almog and 3 of her children. They also murdered her husband and oldest daughter.
Then I ran to check on Yam, and I see that she was shot in the face, and I just saw this for a few seconds. It was a shocking sight. Something got opened right here, and blood was coming out of her head. Such a convulsion. She was half passed out. I was simply stunned, in shock, and I was asking myself, is what I'm seeing right now really happening?
Malki Shem Tov is the father of 21-year-old Omer, still a hostage after being kidnapped from the Nova Festival.
I saw him already more than 7 months. I terribly miss him. And if he hear me, I want to tell him that we do everything to bring him back home. Him and all the other hostages. Omer, just wait for us.
70-year-old Louis Har, kidnapped along with his friend Fernando Simon Marman, has a different story. The IDF rescued them in February.
Suddenly, I heard boom, and then wild shooting began and someone grabbed my leg, pulled me down and said, "Put your head down." He said, "Luis, we are the IDF. The IDF. We came to take you home." From that moment, that's it. I was in their hands. It gave me so much confidence.
Louis told CBN News the most important priority is to bring the hostages home.
We didn't lose our hope, and I hope that no one here loses his hope, because this is the last thing that needs to happen. We need to be strong in order to do everything to bring the hostages home.
He says being in captivity convinced him that belief in coexistence just is impossible.
Many of the captors said to me, they don't think we should be here. There shouldn't be a land of Israel. There should only be Palestine. That says that we don't have a partner for peace because they teach their children this from the time they're born. They only value hatred, to buy a weapon, and to kill the Jews. That's what they know.
Moshe Or's brother, Avi Natan, was kidnapped along with his girlfriend, Noah Argamani, whose mother has terminal brain cancer. Moshe hopes the free world will pressure Hamas in any way possible to free the hostages, because not doing so sends a dangerous message.
What will the terrorists all over the world will see and learn? They will learn that by taking hostages, civilians hostages, they can have benefits or earn something in the political field. Imagine yourself what will happen in terrorists in the USA. They will try, okay, if they will want to get something in the political field, they will take hostages.
With more than 130 hostages still in Hamas captivity, the issue remains a top priority for Israel. Julie Stahl, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Still ahead, praying for the peace of Jerusalem and all of Israel, more crucial now than ever. As Israel is at war, Christians from around the world are coming up to Jerusalem for the Jerusalem Prayer Breakfast. I spoke with founder Albert Wexler about the upcoming event and how important it is to pray for the peace of Jerusalem and Israel at this time. Albert Wexler, great to be with you again here, talking about the Jerusalem Prayer Breakfast that you helped found. Tell us about this upcoming one here in Jerusalem, which is actually the first one in Jerusalem since October 7th.
Thank you, Chris, for having me. Well, we're really excited about the upcoming Jerusalem Prayer Breakfast, and I think God will really carve out a special moment in time, gathering the nations, allowing us to come together to pray for the peace of Jerusalem before some, I believe, major changes and shifts are going to take place. Because, I mean, we are heading to a major confrontation. You don't need to be a prophet to realize that. And the West is really under a massive attack, and they haven't really understood it. But I think this is something that we're going to be seeing in this coming time. So there's never been a better time to come to Jerusalem and pray.
Okay, and you have people coming here from the nations?
Yes, despite all the cancellations of flights and whatnot, people are coming from all over the world, from Japan, from United States, from Europe, from Africa, and so we will have a very international crowd of people, as always, leaders, congressmen, members of parliament, and of course our Knesset members are going to be hosting them in the Knesset at Waldorf Astoria Hotel, and it's going to be huge.
How significant it is when you have members of Knessets and parliaments, mayors, to come here and pray for Jerusalem and then have that impact in their own nations?
I think this is very significant, and I think it is something we're very much looking forward for, because every time when the Jews and Christians come together and pray, there is a significant change coming. I would even call it a history-making moment. We saw it in Holland. You were there with us when the reparation funds that were held back were suddenly released on the day we were gathered at the Riddersaal. We've seen it in Rome, Italy, when the senators promised to help Israel and move the embassy, and then they win the elections exactly a year later. Now they have to fulfill their promise. Yeah. But there's like many things that you can see. I could tell story after story. We were just in Sweden, so amazing unity and love and support for Israel, despite the fact that the people on the streets of Stockholm were not so happy.
Yeah. Now, you founded this Jerusalem Prayer Breakfast how many years ago?
That was in 2016. We started talking with Robert Ilatov. Then President Reuven Rivlin endorsed the idea as a great surprise for all of us. And then we launched it 2017. You were actually one of our founders. You came and you've seen it, take us all over the world. We have been now in 20 cities, outside of Israel. So it's the 8th annual Jerusalem Prayer Breakfast in Israel, and then after that we're going to go to New York on the UN week.
Well, that's a significant place and time to be when literally the nations of the world come back to New York for the annual General Assembly. Tell us how people can, they can either come here, you're expecting of several hundred, but how can they find out about the Jerusalem Prayer Breakfast? Well, we have our website, www.jerusalemprayerbreakfast.org, and there is a contact button. There is the information about the registration. People can contact us and say, please tell me how to register, or tell me how to watch the live stream of the Jerusalem Prayer Breakfast on May 29 and 30th. So it's very simple. It's just to click on contact. And final question, Albert, how important is it to be praying for the peace of Jerusalem at this time? Chris, there's never been a more important time to pray for the peace of Jerusalem. We are at war. Our boys are dying in Gaza, and there is a front in the north. In the south, there can be some more fronts open up. Iran just attacked us with 350 projectiles, and you see God protected us from any direct hits. So is it the time to pray for peace of Jerusalem? I think it is. I think so too. Albert Vrexel, thanks for joining us, and look forward to the Jerusalem Prayer Breakfast. Thank you, Chris. Really appreciate you having me. Well, that's all for this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. Thanks for joining us. Remember, you can follow us on social media, and you can access CBN content through our CBN News and other CBN apps. And please continue to pray for the peace of Jerusalem and Israel at this critical moment, and for the speedy and safe return of the hostages. Here are some of the names to pray for: Sasha, Trofano, Leary Ilbag, Alexander Danzig, Matan Angritz, Almog Sarusi, Omer Shemtov, Avi Natan, and Noah Argamani. I'm Chris Mitchell. We'll see you next time on Jerusalem Dateline.